Hello, daily actors. Today we're going to sow some seeds of inspiration about the power of plant propagation. If there's a fountain of youth on this earth, it's the ability to grow new seeds and to grow plants from stems and roots and branches and leaves. So last month, Annie shared a bit about how to propagate seeds. These are some of our seedlings. And just to add to that, you could also let your plants go to seed in your garden bed. We let a kale go to seed in our winter garden this year, and it caused hundreds of plants probably to show up all over our garden. And so we've been eating months worth of kale from all these baby starts. Second is, this is actually a bucket of grape cuttings, and since I used soil from the garden, all these plants self-sowed. So using self-sowing annuals that will propagate around the garden themselves. These are a bunch of different food and medicinal plants. You could see stinging nettles, magenta lamb's quarters, there's kale in there, there's a tomato, there's some chickweed. And then, sometimes if you have a small space, it takes a long time to let things go to seed, to save seed. And so if you want to get planting sooner, what you could do is you could dig up your plant, like this mustard, and you put it in a container and you set it off to the side and water it, and then it could take the weeks to month or whatever that it needs to go to seed, and you're able to use that growing space. So now we're going to walk over and look at plant division, which is where you could dig up portions of a plant to create starts to propagate around your garden or to share with others. And so these are a couple chamomile plants that we dug up off of a mother plant in the front yard. And then another strategy is using root suckers. This is a goji berry, a boysenberry, a Chilean guava, and a plum tree that all came from root suckers, where you could dig up a piece of root, or as the plant starts to self-propagate, you could dig it up and put it in a container. Moving over, we're going to talk a bit about cuttings. And so these are a range of different types of grape cuttings. And you could grow cuttings in water, in soil, in perlite or sand. Different plants like different mediums, but just experiment and play around with them. This is a tree collard, or a perennial collard green. And I actually took these cuttings off of a high school parking lot by our house, and it'll grow into this big, beautiful perennial collard green. The latest kitchen craze that many people have seen is growing from our food scraps. These are carrot tops we're growing greens and seeds from. This is some chocolate mint. You could grow all kinds of things from your scraps. And then you could actually turn one potato into 3, 4, 5 potato plants. Each eye on a potato, you can see this plate of cuttings, grows its own plant. This here is a willow, and willow has a really powerful rooting hormone. You can see all these roots grew in just a few weeks. And so in addition to growing a new plant, you could actually cut pieces of this bark up, put it in water, or you could boil it a little bit and create a rooting hormone that then you could use to help root other plants. Moving on to grafting. So this plum tree was one of the only plants in our whole garden we moved in. And our neighbor Roger, who taught me how to graft, came over and helped us top work it, where we cut back the plum tree, and you could see added all these different varieties of plums to one tree. So you could have 4, 5, 6, 7 varieties of plums on a tree, and then they fruit in different seasons. Rather than getting 40 pounds of little cherry plums at once, you could have month after month of plums. This is a root sucker of that plum. And rather than digging it up, or we could have gave it away or just cut it back, we decided to graft other varieties onto it. And then this is another root sucker from the same plum. And similarly, this time we thought, why not make an edible plum arch? And so we dug up another root sucker and then wove them together. And then over the last few years, you can see each of these tags, we've been adding different varieties of plum throughout the arch. And so this sugar plum, which is a prune plum, is one of the plums that we've grown, that we grafted this year, right here. And this Hollywood plum is a graft from last year next to the original cherry plum on the tree. So there's a lot of ways that you could propagate plants. You could add a lot more plants to your garden. You could share with family and friends. You could protect endangered species or things you just want to preserve and share. Literally dozens of plants and vines and trees in our garden have come from other friends, and each one has a story. And likewise, we've planted and shared hundreds to maybe thousands of plants from our garden over the years. So I hope you're inspired and motivated with some new ideas, and just to go out and have fun and experiment.